Well, so let's go ahead and get started. Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the Transplant Trailblazer and Home Hero Interactive event. I am Arlanda Taylor, the Quality Improvement Coordinator here at the ESRD Network, and joining me for today's call is the rest of the Quality Improvement team, Danny Anchia and Miriam Alaboud. And also joining us are members from our Patient Advisory Committee, Sam and Lacey Trevino, and Precious Mccowin. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Without you, these events wouldn't be possible. And you guys are awesome. You have amazing stories to share with everybody. Before we get started with our presentation on how home dialysis can be a stepping stone to transplant, I just want to mention a few housekeeping items. All the lines have been muted, but if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat and we will answer them at the end during the Q&A session. This presentation is also being recorded and will be posted to our website or in our portals at a later date along with the slides. The ESRD Network is a non-for-profit organization in Texas that provides services on behalf of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, otherwise known as CMS. Our main mission has always been to support ethical, patient and family-centered dialysis and kidney transplants healthcare through quality improvement initiatives, patient services, and information management. Here are two remarkable people who have gone through their journey together since day one and still continue to educate and help other patients. Sam and Lacey, do you guys want to introduce yourselves to everybody?
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hi, y'all. My name is Lacey Trevino, and I am a patient advocate. And I was Sam's care partner for 17 years while he was on dialysis. And I was blessed to be able to become his donor almost 11 years ago.
Yep. And I'm Sam Trevino. I am a patient advocate as well. I was, saved by dialysis. I had a 17-year run on hemodialysis, 10 years at home, 7 years in center. And I was blessed enough to receive the gift of life, a kidney transplant from my wife, Lacey. And so we're here to talk about, everything, your questions, your fears, your concerns, your triumphs. And we're just so happy to be here with you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us, guys.
No, thank you. You guys are our rock stars. You guys are always there for us. So we really appreciate it. And then our other incredible PAC member not only has an amazing story to tell, but she has so much passion and drive to advocate for other patients and improve healthcare quality. Precious, do you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Precious Mccowin. I am a two-time kidney transplant recipient. Before I received my second kidney transplant in 2019, I did in-center hemodialysis for 8 years. My advocacy journey began in 2015, and I advocate for improved patient and family engagement, health literacy, and health equity. So thank you.
I love what you do, Precious. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today, Precious. And just a few facts about the benefits of home dialysis that include it's actually less stressful on the heart. Patients can experience 20% fewer low blood pressure episodes. Having more frequent treatments can help stabilize that blood pressure, and patients can avoid that yo-yo experience that they can experience in center with their blood pressure. And then they also can have fewer medications to take. 87% of patients see an improved post-dialysis recovery time. Patients usually tend to experience that dialysis fog, like we like to call it in center, and they just feel tired, they're drained, they have no energy, and just need some time to recover and bounce back before they can feel better. And the recovery time for a patient that's in center is usually about 8 hours before they start to feel a little bit better. But a patient that's on home dialysis can actually recover in just about an hour. having more treatments, shorter treatments is actually just less strenuous on the body. They also have an improved survival rate, an increased 58% for a 5-year survival for a home hemodialysis patient, and 80% increase in a 2-year survival rate for a peritoneal dialysis patient. And, home dialysis patients are more likely to be on the wait list, and they'll receive a kidney transplant faster. Some data from the Organ Procurement Transplantation Network for the state of Texas in 2020 shows that about 30% of kidney transplants were from living donors, and about 70% of kidney transplants were from deceased donors. So that's about 2,100 transplants that took place last year, even during the pandemic. Transplants were still happening. A patient with a transplant will see an improved quality of life and life expectancy. For example, a 30-year-old on dialysis might live another 15 years or so, but a 30-year-old with a transplant might live another 30 to 40 years. That's a big gap in the years of life expectancy for a patient. And you also achieve better overall health. Not only do the patients feel better, they look better, their lab results are better, their numbers are better, they just feel better, and you get to do what you love and you just have more energy. So then now I am going to pass it over to Lacey and Sam to talk about how steps going to home.
Wait, here we go.
Wait, there we go. Okay, sorry.
There it is.
Sam and Lacey, I'm going to pass it to you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, everybody, thanks for being here and give us your ear. We started this journey as teenagers. I was a 19-year-old college soccer player when I became sick with the signs and symptoms of kidney failure. And I was immediately, rushed into in-center hemodialysis. And that was a scary place to be.
Both of us. I was 18. Sam and I had been dating about a year and a half in high school. And initially everything was fine, but I noticed that something was wrong. He was exhibiting the signs and symptoms of kidney disease, which we didn't know at the time. He was throwing up 5 or 6 times a day. He was exhausted with anemia, went to the doctor and returned with the news that his kidneys had failed and he had to start in-center hemodialysis. I'm 18. I wasn't quite sure how to deal with that news. So I asked him for a little bit of time and did something that most teenage girls don't do. I went to my mom, and my mom knew something was wrong too, but I explained to her that I learned Sam had to start dialysis and I didn't know what to do. So I actually asked my mom, as an 18-year-old, Mom, tell me what to do. And she gave me the best advice. She said, you know what, Lacey, I don't think you should stay with him because he's sick. I said, okay. But she followed that with, I don't think you should leave him just because he's sick. It's like, thanks, Mom. That was your last chance. That didn't help at all. But I realized Sam and I were best friends. We were having the time of our lives, and had this disease not come into our lives, there would be no reason for us to break up. So I said to Sam, if I'm going to start this journey with you, I need to learn everything there is to know about kidney disease and dialysis, because I knew nothing.
Yeah, so we walked into my very first in-center hemodialysis treatment together, and empowerment started right away. As soon as we walked in, and I could have been actually labeled non-compliant because I was the nightmare patient. I was the one that came in with the big open mouth and the closed mind, and I didn't want to be told what to do. I didn't want to hear what anybody had to say. And instead of being labeled non-compliant, these people met us with love and respect and empathy
and compassion.
Yeah, and they sat down and they taught us everything there was to know about dialysis from every point of view in that clinic.
Right.
Those people were doing their jobs as if their lives depended on it, and they were there. They technicians taught us everything about running the machine. They actually turned the machine towards us so we could see everything that they were doing. And they narrated as they touched the machine, hey, I'm doing this and that. They taught me self-cannulation in the first 3 months. We had, nurses teaching us about how to troubleshoot and how to take care of myself between treatments.
Sorry, Didn't know if you were done yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
But as a care partner, I was grateful for that treatment because when I walked in, I again knew nothing about dialysis. So I see all these patients in chairs, bloodlines running everywhere, alarms going off, and I was fearful, which many of our care partners are. However, they said, if you want to be here, you're going to learn. And they were almost insistent upon the fact that, all right, let's go. And in small steps, it grew into, being fearful, that grew into being confident in dialysis. And I was so thankful because they included me as a care partner. Again, I was 18 years old, but over 7 years, we would stay in-center dialysis. I became confident and we became what they called self-care because of the empowerment and education.
Yeah, and you imagine this, we were to the point where we could walk in and our kit was laying in the chair. I'm talking about saline, needles, tape, everything.
Yeah.
And we were able to build the machine, we were able to run treatment, we were able to tear down the treatment, tear down the machine, push disinfect and walk out, and that was so awesome because when a doctor says you have no control over this disease, and these people in center that met us and really expected more of us, it's our disease,
right?
And so they expected us to be engaged, and we became engaged. We had the ability to take that disease and control it ourselves.
So we talk about self-care empowerment, and that's exactly what happened. And his outcomes were better because we learned so much more about how to treat, this illness in between dialysis treatments so that he wouldn't feel so bad. You talk about that dialysis fog, we call it the dialysis hangover, so we could try and reduce those symptoms based on how Sam treated himself in between treatments. And we talk about self-awareness, and I call that self-confidence, because we became over 7 years so much more confident in dialysis that, like I said, we moved into self-care because of that empowerment and education that we had.
And we truly lived on dialysis because of that self-awareness and those better outcomes. We actually were married. We finished our college degrees. I went back and finished my college soccer career, and and it was awesome. Those things that the doctor said at the beginning, you'll never be able to do again, we were doing.
Right.
And so we were in center one day after 7 years, and this home therapy nurse came through and watching us do everything to the machine, and she hit the brakes. I mean, like
you could hear it.
And she stopped and said, "Man, you guys are doing all of this on your own. What do you think about home dialysis?"
Yes, please.
And just like that, before I could open my mouth, Lacey signed us up for a home therapy training. And we were so ready for that because we didn't have to learn anything. We didn't have to learn self-cannulation or how to run the machine.
Right. Or, taking your temperature, your blood pressure, documentation. We're old, so this was before Wi-Fi. But we had already become confident in everything that we were already doing. So why can't we do this at home?
Yep. And so we started home dialysis. And back then, there were no patient-friendly home dialysis machines, so we actually took a floor model machine home, and we were doing well for 5 years like that, and then we were still dialyzing 3 days a week at 4.5 hours per treatment.
Yeah, but we had a little bit more control, and I think that's something that our patients don't understand. Even though when you don't really have to take a floor model machine home anymore, but when we did 3 days a week, we could move our treatments around, outside of that strict chair schedule. And that was a game changer for us because there was a taste of control and a little bit more of your life back.
Oh, yes. And so, after 5 years on a big machine, the first next stage machine came out in 2005, and we were able to train within 2 weeks, and we took this machine home. And the magic in that was more frequency.
Right.
We started dialyzing 5 days a week instead of 3. And at 5 days a week, it was almost like having real kidney function.
Sam, I saw the immediate difference. You're talking about better patient outcomes, and that's because of more frequent dialysis. So when you're dialyzing 5 days a week as opposed to 7, your blood
as opposed to 3.
Oh, sorry, as opposed to 3. Thank you. Your blood work is coming back almost as if you had a transplant. So, little things like patients will say, I can't dialyze at home because my blood pressure bottoms out, when they're dialyzing 3 days a week in center. Guess what? His blood pressure completely regulated to the point where he stopped taking 3 different blood pressure medications.
And I saved $300 a month.
He felt amazing. That dialysis hangover essentially went away. His recovery time was minutes, and that gave us back our social life. Now we have a portable machine. We can travel, which we did, and Sam became the perfect transplant candidate.
Yeah, and that's what happened. We were, not only did I feel better, my blood work was coming back as if I had a kidney transplant.
Next slide, please.
I think, Precious, that's up to you then.
Yes, you guys are, Sam and Lacey, you guys are like my heroes. Like, I really enjoy listening to your journey, and I can listen to it over and over and over again. Thank you both. I'm just intrigued by the support that you guys give each other. So thank you.
No, thank you. We, we're in this together. It's a family. It's a kidney family.
That's great to have that type of support. So I guess we're gonna move on. My name is Precious Mccowin, and as I stated before, I am a patient advocate, and I'm also a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. Before receiving my second kidney transplant, I did dialysis in center for 8 years. I didn't have the bravery that Sam had to try and do home dialysis. So I stayed in center because of particular fears. But today I'm going to talk to you about the transplant process. So as an advocate, I have learned that so many of my ESRD peers are interested in a transplant. However, they are not familiar with the process. So I'm going to talk to you today about preparing for the transplant process, waiting for a transplant, and treatment adherence. So with preparing for the transplant process, the first thing is to talk to your nephrologist, then set time aside to speak with your social worker to get the evaluation process started, to learn about transplant centers in your area, or even the option of being listed in a different state or region. I was listed at 2 different transplant centers. I've learned that some transplant centers may not accept you for various reasons, while a different one will. So please, if you're turned down the first time, do not give up. So after your application has been received by your selected transplant center, they will contact you to schedule various appointments. These appointments may consist of cardiology tests and various blood tests depending on your health condition. So at your appointment, you will speak with a transplant surgeon, a nephrologist, a social worker, a financial coordinator. You will also be assigned a pre-transplant coordinator that will assist you through your transplant journey. So the transplant coordinator is the individual that will inform you that you are officially placed on the transplant wait list. Believe it or not, some of my peers, they think because they have submitted their application that they are automatically listed on the transplant wait list. But it's a little more to it than just turning in an application. So this transplant coordinator, you may also contact them if you have any questions, once you're listed, if you have any questions about your transplant listing status and approximate wait time. You will also be evaluated annually by your transplant team to determine your eligibility status. This annual process will consist of labs and other tests that your team feel is necessary. So once you get that big evaluation that you get at the beginning, you're listed. If a year goes by and you haven't been called for a transplant, you would do a similar evaluation. It's pretty much the same. Depending on your healthcare status, it may be less labs to take or more labs to take. So moving on to waiting for a transplant. I waited for a kidney transplant, as I mentioned earlier, for 8 years for various reasons. One reason was because I decided to be listed on the deceased donor list. However, the wait had a good impact on my daily life regarding my self-care. Because I wanted to remain active on the transplant wait list, I made sure that I followed up with all of my physicians. I also followed my renal diet. During the transplant wait list process, I learned that it is important to become more active because being overweight or underweight can be a temporary disqualification for a transplant. It is also important to manage infection control by washing your hands often, using sanitizers, and wearing a mask during flu season, and even most importantly, wearing a mask due to COVID-19. So this is important because if you are sick and are called for a transplant, you may not be able to receive it until you are cleared by your transplant team. So it is essential to report any hospitalizations, illnesses, and any new health conditions to your transplant coordinator. I was inactive on the transplant wait list with my first transplant for 3 months due to a blood clot. On a separate occasion, I was inactive for 3 weeks due to a hospital stay from chest pain. But at that time, I had to when I was hospitalized for the chest pain, I had to be reevaluated by a cardiologist before I could be placed back on the wait list. But the good news is that during the time that you are inactive or may become inactive, you do not lose your spot on the transplant wait list. You just pick up as usual, back in order, back in line. But most of all, it is essential to advocate for yourself during this process. Be sure to communicate to your transplant team how you feel, your concerns, and what types of interactions with your healthcare team works best for you. So never be afraid to speak up. This is the time to ask every question or concern that comes to mind. So next, I'm moving on to treatment adherence. It is important to complete all of your prescribed dialysis treatments and take prescription medication. Your transplant center does check with your dialysis facility to learn about your status, and they may request for a report about mistreatment. Some transplant centers evaluate this report to determine your eligibility for a transplant. Also, it is very important to watch your fluid levels. The more fluid you consume, the more damage you are doing to your heart and lungs. It will help if you had every organ functioning at its best before you receive your transplant, before going into surgery. So Network 14 has developed a transplant checklist. This checklist will help you prepare for your transplant evaluation. It has an area on there where you can write down important phone numbers, the names of your transplant team, your medications, and it also has an area in there where it kind of helps you prepare and know what questions to ask. So check that checklist out. I believe that is very helpful. I honestly wish I would have had that checklist when I was going through my transplant process. So next slide, please. Moving on to living donor. So April is National Give Life Month. And before I move forward, I would like to personally thank Lacey for being a donor to her husband, Sam. So thank you so much, Lacey, for your generous contribution to your husband.
It was my pleasure and my blessing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So studies have shown that the life expectancy of a living donor transplant is greater than the life expectancy of a deceased donor. However, there are various factors that truly determine the longevity of a transplant. When I was in the process of being listed to receive a kidney transplant, I actually had a list of family members and strangers that offered to donate me a kidney. However, I did not accept their donation for various reasons. First, I have always carried in the back of my mind, what if the living donor acquires a health condition that may affect the one kidney that they have, causing them to go on dialysis? And, you know, that would devastate me. So I never took that chance. But this fear was actually solidified when I heard a story about a young lady that donated her sister a kidney, and 2 years later she had to start dialysis. But if I would have overcome my fears of receiving a living donor transplant, my wait time would have been far less than 8 years. I probably would have received a kidney transplant within a month or two if I would have taken the living donor route. However, I truly believe in the gift of life. In 2011, my 2-year-old son passed away unexpectedly, and my husband and I decided to donate his organs so that others could have a second chance for a healthy quality of life. You know, it was a heartfelt moment when I received a letter from the gentleman that was the recipient of my son's kidney. You know, the gentleman expressed how grateful he was to receive a second chance at life. So with that being said, with me talking about the transplant process and this being Give Life Month, I would pass the baton back to Sam and Lacey. Take it away, you two.
Thank you, Precious. And you know, your story is that's a tough one. You know, the fact that a mother could do that, you are a guardian angel, and so is your family. That's just amazing, and thank you for doing that. And I just want to say, you know, that because I became the perfect transplant candidate, you know, because of the frequency of dialysis, I started a conversation with Lacey one day, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about me having a transplant?" And
I said, I want to be tested to be your donor.
And I made the mistake of telling her what many of our patients tell us in center as advocates when we talk to them. Well, I have a loved one that wants to give me a kidney, but I don't want to do that to them. And I told Lacey that, hey, I'm not going to do this to you.
And I responded with, you're already doing this to me. You see, way back when I was 18, I knew I was starting a journey. It wasn't a quick fix, and it has been a journey. You know, we were empowered in center. We went home with the floor model machine. We went to more frequent dialysis, which set Sam up for, you know, being the perfect candidate for a transplant. But you understand that just because I'm not on the machine doesn't mean I'm not living the life of a dialysis patient. You know, my schedule kind of revolves around your schedule. I need to be there. I want to be there for your treatments and, so forth and so on. And Precious, by the way, it's really hard for me to speak right now after what you just shared, because that was amazing. Anyway, so I told Sam that I wanted to be tested because I was already living the life of a patient. And so, let's continue this journey.
And so we went to talk to my nephrologist, and without any testing, without any assessment, he just looked at us and said, don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. There's less than a 9% chance that you two will be a match. And he shared his bias with us. He said, you're not the same race. You're not the same blood type. Just forget it.
And I responded with, well, we're not going to find out unless I'm tested, are we?
And not in so many words, not in those words really, but we, demanded to be tested. He could have ruined that for us, that dream, and we refused. And that's something that, Precious alluded to, ask questions, be your best advocate. Don't take no for an answer.
And, one thing I would, back to something Precious said, I knew for a fact that if I was going to do this, I had to accept the possibility that I may have to enter a swap program, and a lot of people may or may not know about that. But if I wasn't going to be a perfect match for Sam, I might be a match for somebody else that could in turn, give Sam a kidney. And I had to be okay with that. And there's a lot of emotion that goes into that too, becoming a living donor. I knew that if something ever happened to my one existing kidney, I may have to go on dialysis, and so I had to kind of process all of that, becoming a living donor.
At the same time, if you are a living donor and something does happen to your kidney, you are immediately rushed up to towards the top of the list. These transplant teams will take that into account and help you out. And so, we did demand on being tested, and long story short, we were a match. And, here we are, almost 11 years later.
Kidney strong.
And dialysis free.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. A huge blessing. And, as a donor, people would ask me questions. Why did you do it? Well, again, Sam and I had been together for a long time. I was already experienced with, dialysis of almost every form aside from peritoneal. And I thought, why not? And some people just don't understand that. And that's okay. It's a choice for each person. My choice was to try, and I was blessed with being a match. So I knew what I was walking into, mostly. It is a little bit harder in recovery for the donor than it is for the recipient. Sam woke up feeling like Superman after the transplant. I mean, we were recovering together, and he's like making me breakfast. And I'm like, dude, you had surgery too. How are you? He's like, I feel great, and, but you know what? With any surgery comes pain, and pain goes away. And it did. And so I was in the hospital for 2 days after the transplant. Sam was in the hospital 3. And then we went home. Thank God we had an amazing family support network that, we could use for recovery. And, you mentioned the financial advisor. We had a great support team that kind of walked us through the whole process from the application to recovery. And so it's something that I love to advocate for, because again, I've had people say, why did you do it? Like, honestly, because I could. That was really the only answer. I didn't really understand the question, but I'm so grateful that I was able to. Again, 11 years, kidney strong. And if we ever have to utilize home therapies again, we will. It served us well.
Yeah. And, our triumphs really are that we had our life back. I have never had an adult life before that without dialysis. Starting dialysis at 19 years old, and having a kidney transplant at you're 36 years old. I had never known what it was like to be an adult without a machine. And here we were. I went back to, actually started this new life together. And It was weird. It was really, really weird. Like, hey,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do for a couple of hours every day, 5 days a week? What do we do?
Here's a funny story. We would because typically we would dialyze in the evenings. We had full-time jobs because we were on home therapies. We, moved dialysis around our schedule. And after the recovery and we went back home and it was like 9 o'clock at night, like, do you want to go to bed? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, we could just like get up and go to bed. That sounds silly, but that was just something that just we never thought about.
Yeah, and that, the paired exchange donor, the swap program, that was also something we had to consider. I had family members tested, and I also thought the same thing, Precious. I thought, my sister was actually a better match than Lacey was. However, I thought the same thing. What if this runs in the family? What if, my sister ends up, needing a kidney because this could have been, a genetic trait. And so that was one of the reasons I actually opted for Lacey's, but there was fear there as well, because what if I come off of dialysis and my wife goes on to dialysis?
And I had to accept that as well. I still think about that, you never know. But I guess because I grew up with dialysis starting as a care partner at 18, I knew if I had to, I wouldn't be that fearful. So I guess in a sense, that's kind of a triumph, because if it happens, okay, I know how to deal with it.
Yeah, I'll just give her the kidney back.
No, I had to sign paperwork saying I couldn't have it back.
But really, that's the story of our donation and our transplant.
Thank you, guys. That is just so awesome. I'm just smiling and so intrigued by your story. And I had no idea that, Lacey, you were 18 as a care partner, and Sam, you were 19 starting dialysis. I thought I was young starting dialysis.
You know what? Young is relative. It's all in your mind.
Oh, I am. You guys are such a blessing. You really are. I really appreciate your story and believe that more patients and providers, the ESRD community can, gain from it. That's so empowering. But we can move on. I won't hold up any more time.
Guys, real quick, I'm so sorry. I have a call starting in a few minutes, but I have to make sure that I can get on. So I hate to jump off early, but thank you so much for having me. I love what you do. Keep doing it. And as much as I can possibly help, please let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lacey and Sam.
Thank you,
Bye,
Lacey.
guys. Bye, Precious.
Lacey.
Bye, Orlinda.
Bye.
Take care.
I'll be here for a minute.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're stuck with him for a little while.
You're stuck with me.
Okay, great.
Good.
Okay, so for types of living donation, like they mentioned, there is the direct donation, which was Lacey that gave Sam her kidney. A living donor chooses who receives their kidney, and it's usually family members or friends. The non-directed donation is a living donor doesn't choose who receives their kidney. Their kidney is just given to somebody that is a compatible match. And like they talked about, the kidney pair donation, it's when two or more pairs of living donors swapping to make a compatible match. And here is a little graph that shows you if person A initiates a change by donating to a kidney to B, B's uncle, person C, continues the chain to 4 by donating a kidney to person D. And so it just continues, and you can just have this long chain of a match. And if you want to participate, if you have somebody that is willing to donate their kidney, but that isn't a match, think about the paired exchange program. So be sure to speak with your transplant centers to see if that's possible for you guys.
Orlando, real quick.
Yes.
I was reading an article about a year and a half ago that the largest chain was over 100 patients in Birmingham, Alabama. and it was still going. They were like 6 months into it, and they had this chain of just one person giving to the next one, to like they just line it up. Over 100 patients over a period of about 6 months, and it was still going at the time. So I don't know how many patients it ended up being. They planned it for months and they finally executed it, but it's so cool to see that. And it gives people so much hope, you know, that there are so many people out there who can be a match. And the fact that someone is willing to donate, even if they're not even remotely a match to you, they're going to be a match to somebody else. And it's just a matter of finding the right transplant program who's willing to work with you and the donor to find somebody else and be part of one of those kidney pair exchanges. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it blew my mind when I read it.
That's crazy, but that's good. So for the patients that are on the call, don't get discouraged that you don't have somebody that's a match. There is somebody that is a match for you down the road. But don't forget to visit our patient portal. It always has the newest resources and videos highlighting like transplant, home modalities, and other healthcare topics. And we recently just added new subjects such as a healthier you and all about telehealth. So be sure to check that out. So you can visit the patient portal either by scanning the QR code on the screen that you see, or you can visit www.esrdnetwork.org/patient portal. And for anybody that has questions or comments or just anything, you know, you can reach out to myself, Miriam, Danny, or anybody else on the team here at the network. And that will conclude our presentation. And now we can get to the Q&A session. So let me pull up the chat and we can see what we got.
I see something in the Q&A. Social worker, how can I get a copy of the not a match swap PDF sheet? Did you get that one online?
I did. That was just an image from, I think it was from Piedmont, that they were
Okay.
just discussing the not a match, but I'm sure I can find something and I can send it to everybody.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think that would be a nice little one pager for facilities to have on hand and even to hand to the patients. I think that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I don't see any other questions on my end. Do you see any, Arlandra?
I do have some in this chat.
Very good.
Let's see. This is for Sam. Sam, how hard was it for you to for the first time to cannulate yourself?
That is an excellent question. You know, I was only 3 months into dialysis when I first learned how to self-cannulate. And it was because my favorite nurse of all time came in to my treatment and she infiltrated 3 times in the same sitting. And my arm was damaged, it was bruised and swollen. So I had to skip the treatment that day and I had to come back on my off day the next day. So obviously I went through the emotions. I was angry, I was hurt physically, I was in pain, and I returned the next day still kind of angry. And suddenly the guilt set in. I felt bad because this person was my favorite nurse and I know she didn't do that on purpose. That's, you know, so many people become angry when you know, a PCT or a nurse infiltrates. They don't do it on purpose. You know, it's just sometimes it happens. That's just the way it goes. Sometimes we have, you know, tough accesses that are hard to cannulate. So from that guilt, I decided if anybody is going to hurt me, it's going to be me. And so I put my hand out and I asked my nurse to teach me how to self-cannulate, and she taught me within minutes. And for the next 16 years and 9 months, I self-cannulated myself, and I only made one mistake in that time. Also, because I was taking care of my own access and I was the only one touching it, it lasted all 17 years.
That's great. Out of curiosity, did Lacey ever think about cannulating your arm?
Oh, that's another good question. Well, when they asked, they were, at the training, the home therapy training, they asked, hey, who's going to do the cannulating? And I already was, but the look on Lacey's face when they asked her, hey, Lacey, are you considering learning how to cannulate Sam? She looked like this. And I was like, no, 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 no. You know what? I'll do it. That's fine. She just looked too happy to say yes. So I immediately was like, no, I'll take that job. Thank you very much.
That's
Okay.
funny, but it's good to know that the partner has an option to learn, and you never know. I think it's a good idea to have a backup person in case that, you know, for whatever reason, you can break a finger one day, or but God forbid something like that, and so it's always good to have a backup so you don't have to go to the hospital to
True.
get dialysis. So yeah, don't tell Lacey though.
No, and I wouldn't have any, reservations about Lacey cannulating me because my fistula was, a good size. It wasn't full of aneurysms or anything that I had to worry about, but it was, you could see it. It was about finger size all the way down my forearm. So I had full confidence in her that she would be able to cannulate easier, just as easy. However, when it comes to self-cannulation, whoever asked that question, it was a great question. Uh, when it comes to self-cannulation, we can, as self-cannulators, we can stop the damage before it happens. You can feel an infiltration coming before the damage is done. So you can just back out and, retract. And so that's something that I tell patients all the time. You're tired of being hurt by people in center. Well, you should look into doing it yourself. And after I started doing it myself, I didn't let anybody touch me after that.
That's good to hear. This can actually be for you and Precious. How hard was it for you guys to find funding for your transplant? We hear over and over that it's expensive. Some people can't afford their medication. How hard was it for you guys?
Go ahead, Precious, and I'll go after.
Well, it wasn't hard for me. My financial coordinator, she did advise me to save as much as I could. Of course, at that time, I was basically on a fixed income because I was on dialysis. I wasn't working full time, but she did advise me to save as much as I can. The medications, I remember with my first transplant, the medications, because I only waited on the transplant list for 4 months and only did dialysis for 4 months when I got my first transplant, I still had health care through my employer. And the co-payments that I had to pay were expensive for me, especially for someone that wasn't working full time. I think that first go around, my co-payments was like $400 a month. But I found out that American Kidney Fund can help to cover those costs. So I was able to get assistance through American Kidney Fund and I think it was Kidney Health, and they kind of helped to cover the cost of my co-payments. Now this go around, I haven't ran into any issues with co-payments because I have Medicare, and Medicare covers your anti-rejection meds that you would need for your transplant. So I haven't ran into any issues. And with the new bill, that was signed where we were individuals from the National Kidney Foundation, we advocated and introduced a bill for Medicare to continue to cover anti-rejection meds after 3 years. Because after 3 years, if you don't have any other type of disability or health condition that's considered chronic, Medicare, and you're not of Medicare age, Medicare will not cover you. So at that point, you will be responsible for your co-payment for your anti-rejection medications. But since the bill has passed, matter of fact, it passed might have been at the beginning of this year or the end of last year is when it passed. So now, even after that 3 years, and you don't have Medicare as your primary insurance carrier, they will cover your anti-rejection medication. There's only those, and the other ones, whatever else you need, you will be responsible for. But this go around, I haven't had any issues with co-payments and trying to get funding for my medications.
Thank you, Precious. That's great information. In my case, I actually had a job, a full-time job, so I had insurance that was going to cover most of the transplant, and so our issue was time off to recover for the transplant. How were we going to pay our bills if we were not able to work as a husband and wife, donor and recipient couple? So as a direct benefit of us being able to travel and live our lives on dialysis, we were able to follow our passion. Our passion is live music, live rock and roll. So we're here in Houston, Texas. We actually made 6 trips in a row to Austin, the self-proclaimed live music capital of the world. And we met real rock stars. We were hanging out with these guys and, listening to great music. And when it came time for them to ask that question, how are you going to pay your bills? We didn't know the answer to that question. But Lacey reached out to our rock star friends and they played a concert for us, a 4-hour concert called Kidney Palooza. And we raised 4 months worth of every bill that we needed to recover, extra medications, gas to the hospital, parking at the hospital, lunch at the hospital, because post-transplant, you spend a lot of time with your medical transplant team. So that's a big passion for us. We are actually, in this time, we have met so many people in the same situation as us. Look, I can't take off of work. I can't do this for my family member or my loved one because I have to pay my bills. So Kidney Palooza 2.0 will be coming out again. We're going to be rocking and rolling and partying and dancing, and we're going to raise money for people in that situation. We're going to raise money for awareness, kidney awareness and testing, and so that we can help other people have that chance at life again. So keep your ears open. Kidney Palooza 2.0. It'll be here for a good reason. Hopefully it'll be here forever.
That's awesome, Sam. Make sure you let us know so we can help spread the word for you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, keep us posted. And I just wanted to add, do not let your financial issues discourage you from being listed for a transplant or going through the transplant process. I mean, there is support out there, and you will be assigned, like I spoke earlier about a social worker and a financial coordinator. They will do their best to get you that assistance that you need. So please don't let your finances discourage you from being listed for a transplant, because so many of my peers as well was like, I want a transplant, but I don't think I'll be able to afford the medication. And that was one of my fears as well, but I didn't stand on that fear. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to be listed and see what happens, ask for assistance, see if there's anything that's, any programs out there that would help me cover the cost. But please don't let that discourage you.
Thank you, Precious. There's another question for Sam. As a home patient, have you experienced any emergency disasters? And if yes, was it easier or harder to get treatments during that disaster?
Man, these people know my story. Who is this person? That's what I want to know. Asking these great questions. When we trained on the first portable hemodialysis machine, the next stage machine, if you're not familiar with it, we grew up in the Galveston area, and we were asked to try this new technology out, and so we did. We jumped on the training, and the magnet for us was its portability. You could go places. And so that's how we were able to go to Austin all those times. And we took our machine with us. But when we finished our training, we took our machine home to Houston. And 12 hours later, we took our very first road trip. And our very first road trip was a Hurricane Rita evacuation. Houston kicked everybody out. Hurricane Rita was set to slam into the coast of Texas and really Galveston in that area. And so we literally walked into the house with this brand new technology. We packed up all of our stuff, put it all in the truck, everything that we could manage, and we ran for our lives. What should have been a 45-minute drive out of Houston normally turned into a 21-hour nightmare. And we were stuck in this traffic. And at 21 hours, you know how patients are. We become ticking time bombs. And because I had the ability to take care of myself on the road, I was able to stop at 2 different places on the way out of town and dialyze.
Wow.
Wow. Oh, that's kind of comforting, and to hear that you're able to do that.
It was scary.
But yeah. Okay, let's see. For both of you guys, what have you been able to do after your transplant that you feel you would not have been able to do as an in-center patient?
Good on it, Precious. You got it?
Well, honestly speaking, when I started dialysis and when I became a more engaged patient and decided that I wasn't going to let dialysis or kidney disease defeat me, I still continue to do everything that I wanted to do. I like to dance. I'm a drill team coach for a Little League drill team. So I continued on with that. With the transplant, I can admit that I have more energy. So I have more energy now. I've always wanted to go back to school and retrieve my master's and a PhD. So I did retrieve my master's degree on dialysis. And now I'm in the process of receiving my PhD. So a lot of things that I wanted to do, I never stopped doing it. And I think that's because I was like, I'm not going to let kidney disease defeat me. I'm not going to let it define me or limit me from my dreams. So, I mean, the upside is I have more energy. The downside is I've gained some weight. So, I've gained weight, but hey, I love it. I love being able to not be connected to a machine for 4 hours. As stated before, in-center dialysis takes a heavy toll on you. I really appreciate that freedom. I don't have to worry about going in, the Texas storm that we just had. I didn't have to worry about trying to drive myself to my facility, which for me is like 30 minutes from where I live. So that would have been a very long drive. But I just appreciate the extra freedom and the extra energy.
Yes, I would say the same thing. I've been a professional soccer coach since I was, I don't know how old. I've been a soccer coach, and so many times I was forced to watch my teams go on the road without me because I had a dialysis schedule I had to stick to. And when I started dialyzing at home, or even after transplant, I was able to go to championship games with my teams. I was able to travel out of town for tournaments. And because of the energy level, I really did feel like Superman again after the transplant. I was able to run a half marathon. And that was a bucket list thing that I only wanted to check off once. I'll probably never do that again. But I was able to do that with energy, and honestly, just like Precious was saying, the freedom to do what you want, anytime, anywhere.
Great, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing your experiences. We're right about at 1 o'clock, but before we conclude, I have one more question for both of you. What's one piece of advice that you can give patients regarding home or transplant or both that you would like them to know that they may not know?
I guess I could speak to transplant. One piece of information that I think is very important and sometimes overlooked is that you may still have some challenges. It all varies on the individual. I know we get excited about a transplant. We're thinking that, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. Oh, I feel better. You do. But sometimes there are other conditions that may arise. Like for myself, I had got something called BK virus. I never heard of BK virus. It's something that's already in our system, but because our immune system is suppressed, it flares up and it can attack the kidney. So it's very important too to talk to your transplant team and ask them, hey, what are my risks with the transplant? Or what are some of the other conditions that can arise when I get a transplant? Don't let that discourage you because it's different for everyone. Just because I got it doesn't mean that you may get it. But that's important for patients to know because I know with my first transplant, in the back of my mind, I was like, hey, no more dialysis for me. I feel good. I won't be sick anymore. And boom, my kidney went into rejection after 7 months and I was back on dialysis. So it's very important to ask those questions as to what are the risks after receiving a transplant.
I think, thank you, Precious. That's brilliant. I think my one advice would be whether it's dialysis or transplant, don't be a victim. Take control. Be involved in your treatments. Ask questions. Don't take no for an answer. And don't go to the doctor alone ever. Don't go to your treatments alone if you don't have to. Don't go to the doctor alone because 2 heads are better than 1. And nobody's going to know you better than you. So speak up, say something.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for giving that piece of advice to everybody. I wish we could keep talking and hanging out, but unfortunately we have to conclude the presentation. But thank you everybody for joining today. And of course, thanks so much to Precious and Sam, and of course, Lacey, for, speaking on their experiences, what they've gone through. And thank you again for everybody for joining. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.